Good evening and good day. Blessings to you. I'd like to warmly welcome you into this space. Yeah, we have our next retreat coming February 7th through the 9th, 2025. I do hope you can join. Do hope you can join. And so this will be a retreat where it's called the Winter Stillness Retreat. And we're going to spend a lot of time meditating and going inward and just seeing what's here within you that is awake and aware, what is here within you that is wanting support and guidance. And so I do hope you can come. Do hope you can come. Also, I'm working on another in-person retreat, and it'll probably be sometime in April. I'm just struggling to find a place that will suit us. And so hopefully the retreat gods will align, and I'll be able to post that soon. And then for those interested this summer, I'll be back at Kripalu again, and that'll be sometime in mid-July. Okay, I think that's are all the announcements. Yeah. Okay, well, let us shut down our eyes, and I invite you just to connect directly with your heart, and just breathing and feeling and opening in the space of the heart. And of course, in order to connect deeply with the heart, we have to be willing to let go of our identification with the thinking mind. Just all that serious business we do up in the head, all that thinking, all that figuring, all that sorting. For the next hour or so, I'm going to invite us just to let that fall away and to come into the space of the heart. And I invite us to notice, to experience the natural radiance in the heart. And a radiance that has no age, no walls, no boundaries, no past. But I invite you to join me in just falling into the direct experience, the vibrancy of your heart, the innate goodness of your heart. And this day, you may even notice almost like a noble perfection throughout the heart. And so we are breathing, feeling, and dropping into this depth of being. And so we're letting go of thoughts, letting go of emotion as a point from which we identify from. Most of us identify as our thoughts and as our emotions, but I'm inviting us this moment to go much deeper and to acknowledge throughout the entirety of your life there has been this fundamental goodness, fundamental innocence and purity of being. Right here in the center of your chest, that radiates throughout your being. this fundamental sense that I am good. I am innocent. I am pure. I am whole and complete. And you might not hear these words exactly, but as we come into the heart, you feel the vibration of completeness, of wholeness. Or if we ever stand outside and look up at the moon, we don't say there's something wrong with the moon. It's a bad moon. It's not whole. It's not complete. We look at it and we see the beauty of the moon fully without any judgment. For some reason, it's very hard to judge the moon. And I invite the same to be true in relationship to your heart, to your essence. That there is an innate goodness here. Which is naturally good, naturally innocent and pure. It's whole, it's complete. And if anyone could reach into you and take this away from you, you would cease to exist. It's this essence of love, of radiance. It's your fundamental nature. Thoughts come and go, feelings come and go, emotion, trauma, good times, bad times come and go. But there is something here that is persistent, that knows up from down, good from bad, right from wrong. Something that is naturally pure, divine, and holy. And I'm going to invite tonight, this day, that you just imagine that your two eyes began to descend and become anchored right there on the surface of the heart. And so that you see and perceive life from this space of love, from this space of innocence and purity. So I invite you just to try this on, just to see life. To see your humanity. To see your path. Your mother, father, sister, brother, to see partner, lover, friends, family, community, to see life, to experience life from the vantage point, from the perspective of the heart. To gently acknowledge how that is different And when we see life through the lens of the judgmental mind or egoic nature, and so we can play around with opening our eyes and seeing the beautiful people on our screens, and looking around your home and feeling, experiencing a sense of unified spaciousness, unified radiance. And this ability comes online when we are willing to see life through the lens of our heart. But if we see life through our divisive ego, we will have a much different experience. Much different experience. So I believe tomorrow, I could be mistaken, but I believe tomorrow, here in the United States, we get a new president. And, if we look through a political lens, we could be happy or we could be angry. But when you look out at that same life through the lens of the heart, we see beauty, we see radiance. We see that this is God's world and that there's a plan, an intelligence to life. To life. When we look at life through the lens of our ego, we often think there is no plan. You might think my life is a disaster. My kids are a disaster. My boss is a disaster. My mother, father, my childhood was a disaster, whatever it is. But when we look out at life through this lens of the heart, it does this beautiful thing. It connects us with all of life, with the goodness of life. Now, your heart is intelligent as well, of course. Your heart can tell you, oh, there might be some danger ahead, or difficulty, or you might see someone who's skewed in their psyche, or they're in a place of confusion. But when you look at them through the lens of the heart, there's a sense of love and inclusivity in regards to whatever it is that our discerning nature maybe has a little caution about. And this could be a really interesting way to live. It can be very confusing at first when we look out at life and we see that all of life is God. That all of life is divine. It can be confusing to an ego that is used to, accustomed to judging or denying or guarding. And so I'm going to invite us to play with this. A couple of weeks ago, I invited us to go outside and just play with being radically open before the night sky, being radically open in nature, seeing the beauty, the expansive nature of this world. And that's one of the divine ways of viewing life. Is when we can see life from this hugeness, this timeless, vast, spacious reality. Now, as we come down into the heart and we look out at life through the lens of the heart, we still see this vast expansion, but it has a quality of love, a quality of intimacy when we see life through the lens of the heart, through the perspective of the heart. And you might find having greater acceptance, greater patience, greater sense of forgiveness, allowing, including. And if you really open, begin to experience this intimacy, a great intimacy with all of life. You don't feel as if you are separate from. And the fear and the ego as well. No, I need separation. I need a sense of guardedness. Like I went to the supermarket the other night and things were a little crazy there. There was, some shady characters out. But, I was in my heart and, I still saw some shady characters being shady. But there was a sense of love for them, a sense of inclusivity with them. That didn't mean I was going to go, hang out and party with them, later in the night. But there's just this sense of it's okay. It's okay that they are here. It's okay that they are here. That they are a part of creation, a part of the dance of the divine. You start to see that, even shady characters have souls, souls. Because sometimes our mind, it like dehumanizes people. It puts them in boxes and says, I'm not going to include that. Those people might hurt me or harm me or ridicule me or whatever it is that people are afraid of. But there's this beautiful thing that happens when we see life through the lens of our heart. We see that this whole world is a spiritual world. And it is easy then for us to have faith. Well, what is faith? Faith is when we see creation, when we see this world as a spiritual world. Sometimes people teach that faith is like having some kind of belief and, what's it called at the church? Is it the Apostles' Creed? I think so. I could give my spiritual vocabulary words mixed up, but I believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth. That thing. So sometimes we think we're professing our faith. That's how they teach it in religion. But in the world of spirituality, faith is the direct experience of seeing God, of seeing divinity, of seeing beauty everywhere. Everywhere. Now, even in life's difficulty. And maybe beauty is too strong of a word for some of you, but we see that, well, sometimes these difficulties, well, these are challenges and they are an aspect of our path. And so with faith, it's easy to see life's challenges as God coming into your life, challenging you to grow up, challenging you to accept, challenging you to forgive, challenging you to see that all of life is divine. One of the hardest things on the spiritual path is to embrace challenge, to embrace difficulty. Most of us, when we face something difficult, well, we throw our faith out. We go right up into our logical mind, or sometimes we just go into a defensive mind. Sometimes we go into a strategizing mind. When we see something we don't understand. Now, I hope that all of you are keeping up to date on the latest news in the world of UFOs, UAPs. That there was an Air Force pilot who came forward, and he said he was a part of a crash retrieval program, so he had to go pick up this object, and part of his job was that he would have to go pick up some things, and he wouldn't know what they were. But he began to get close to this object, and even before he saw it, he said he felt all this emotion come forward in his heart. And it was a mix between just great sadness and great love. And eventually he went and he found the object, and his team kind of got it connected to his helicopter, and he was going to pick it up and transport it. And he just felt all this overwhelming love. All this overwhelming love. Now, most of us as human beings, when we see something that we don't understand, most of us, our body will contract or it will fear. And even like within our immune system, when our immune system sees something, experiences something that it doesn't understand, the immune system automatically will start to attack that thing in the body. And say, I need to go to war with that. That's a common thing that happens with allergies, is people, their immune system just starts attacking something that it doesn't need to attack. But when our heart is open, when it's really open, like wide open, we tend to see all of life in a way that is inclusive, a way that is fully accepting, that has room, that has space. But our mind looks at life, through this lens of the world is dangerous. And when we look out through the lens of the heart, through the lens of faith, we look out and we see that life is good. Is good. Life is good. I was again at the supermarket just a little bit ago, and this cashier, he, like, I normally do the self checkout, but like one of the cashiers is this young kind of hippie fella, maybe 18, 19 years old, and he like came out and he got me. He's like, hey, let me help you out. And I was like, oh, okay, like, yeah, help me out. And so, but he had such positivity. He had such positivity. It's just like flowing from his eyes, from his face. He was just like so happy to be working as a cashier. And he really made eye contact with me, asked me how my day was going, really wanted to know, what I was getting into. And it was beautiful to see someone who's experiencing life from a place of love, from a place of openness. He was telling me how happy he was to be inside working the cash register. I mean, I thought it was kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, today was a little bit cold in Colorado. So he says, nice not to be outside in the cold. I was like, yeah, it is nice to be in here. He's like, we got a heater in here. And I was like, yeah, man, a heater. All right, a heater. And see, we human beings, like we have these egos that are just so habitual. We forget about all the good fortune we have all day long. We have running water. I'm going to assume that, everyone here has clean water. We have food in the refrigerator. We have a warm home. There's so much to be thankful for. And when we have faith, we see that that life has provided for us, that life is eternally taking care of us. But when we're in an ego reality, the ego is always looking for problems. That's its job. It's not even wrong that it looks for problems, but that's just the job of the ego, is to scan the environment and look for problems. And if there's no problems in the environment, it starts to scan itself. It starts to scan you. There's got to be a problem here somewhere that I can attack. That I can attack. And we've all done this, looked in the mirror and said, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too big, I'm too little, I'm too this, I'm too that. And that's the game of the ego. But the game of the heart is a game of love. It's a movement of love, a movement of inclusivity. The heart sees that this is God's world. And so faith becomes easy. But the mind sees that this is my small world, my small perspective. And I'm in this isolated body. And I need to protect myself from you. Or maybe I need to use you, or latch on to you, or grasp at you, or take from you, or whatever it is. I have a friend, and he's a hunter, and he's not just like, a hunter once a year. He's a hunter like every month out of the year. So he's a professional and he's a guide. And it's always interesting to me because when I'm with him, I just notice how his mind operates. And he walks through life like a predator, like a predator, like a predator. And I think I told you guys this, a couple of weeks ago. He shot a cat, a mountain lion, and he told me he was hunting coyotes that day. I was like, okay. And I hung out with some native friends, and they were basically saying like, hey, we don't hunt cats, and we certainly don't eat cats. Like it's a bad omen, bad bad energy. They said something different, bad juju. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that anymore, but I hope that's still politically correct. Anyways, they said it's bad energy to eat a cat. And so I told this to my hunter friend, and he just looked at me and laughed. He said, I'm not Native American. Those rules don't apply to me. And I was just like, all right. All right, but he just had this view, a real strong view of me against the world. It's me, and I'm going to go and I'm going to take from the world. And they asked, like, what do you do with that cat? He's like, I eat it. I eat it. It's like, it makes me strong. And, this guy is, he's strong. He's a killer, literally. Like, he's literally a killer. He's literally a killer. And I do jujitsu with him. And it's like, when you roll with him, you think he's trying to kill you, literally. Most people, you think they're trying to choke you out or, tap you out one way or the other, beat you up a little bit. But this guy, you roll with him, he's like trying to kill you. Is what it feels like being in his presence. And so this is kind of, I don't want to, it's not wrong. It's just, this is different than the spiritual path. In the spiritual path, we are moving in the direction of unity, of love, of compassion, of forgiveness. It's an energy of sharing. And oftentimes we speak about sharing in the faith. And what does that mean? It means sharing in the direct experience. Like when we come on retreat, when we are in satsang, there's this beautiful thing that happens. Where this energy just starts to awaken within us, within the group, within the room, within the space. And we share in the faith, we share in the experience. This experience of light, of love, of radiance. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And so there's an invitation here for us to come together in a way where we acknowledge this is a divine world. This is a world of beauty, of peace, of spaciousness, a world of truth. A world of truth, of light, of love, of compassion. And again, when we stay in this view, we see this beauty, we see this divinity. Even if you look at something violent or something harsh, and there's been many times, when I'm walking down the street and, one of the neighbors has like a big pit bull or something, that's on the leash chomping at the bit. And I got these little puffball dogs that I walk down the street. And I get a little nervous, like, although, like, I don't want my dogs to get eaten. But if I look from fear, I'll see a big angry pit bull. But when I look through the lens of the heart, even if that pit bull is barking and angry, well, I'll see his heart. I'll see his beauty. I'll see his innocence. I'll see how he may have a big bark, but he also has a big heart. A big heart. And it can create this paradox when we start to see life through the heart in a faith-based way. We have faith that all humans are innately good. But their ego manifestation, we might find, is really confused. It's maybe a polite way of putting it. But we see, oh no, all beings have a heart. And we see their divinity. And when we see their divinity, it gives us the ability to work with them. To work with life. Life becomes workable. Whereas when we are in an egoic perspective, the ego's always trying to close doors all around us and make our world just really small. And like a small little safe cocoon is where the ego wants to get us. But most of us find, of course, that when we get ourselves in that small little cocoon, we start to feel claustrophobic. We say, this is not the truth. And as we begin to wake up and see life through this lens of faith, we see love and beauty everywhere. We see, oh, this is the truth. This is the truth. Our heart is hardwired to experience unity and to feel good. Feel good when you open to love, when you experience oneness and unity. And you literally feel bad. You feel like garbage when you shut down, when you judge another, when you say this should not be. You say these people shouldn't exist. These people are wrong. They're on the wrong side of history. They're this, they're that. When we judge, when we discriminate. When you do that, when we have a bias against, part of your heart will close. But as your heart opens, we see life without bias. Without bias, much less bias, at least, much less bias. Like 90% of bias falls away. And there's a freedom in that. There's a nobility. And there's a righteousness that feels good, not a righteousness that feels like I am right. But rather there's a righteousness about life, that life is all right. Life is all right. And so I'm going to invite us to work with this. And so like a little activity that we could play with is, when we go outside and we go for walks and we walk our four-legged friends, or maybe we just walk our two-legged self, as we walk around looking out at life through the lens of the heart. And see, what kind of world do you see when you look out from the heart? You see, this is God's world, it's a divine world, and your faith leads you. Do you see oneness and unity? Like you might even see friends where once you saw enemies. And so I'm going to invite you just to play with this, just looking out at life through the heart. And see, well, what is it like? What is your experience like? Certainly much easier to have faith. We see life through the heart. And if we look at life through the mind, when we look at life through the mind, it's very difficult to have faith. Very difficult. Okay. So I had a couple of questions that were emailed in. So I'm going to check those out. And of course, if anyone here has a question and they want to come forward and interact, we'll be happy to speak with you. And yeah. So let's see. Okay. Hi, Craig. I have a question I was hoping you might answer. One satsang. I have heard it told that spiritual masters can affect the collective in profound ways. For example, the Maharishi effect, where crime goes down in specific areas where large groups meditate. I also read that Sri Aurobindo attributed the Allies winning in World War II in part to his spiritual efforts. Can you comment on this and how this works? I'd love to hear your experience and perspective. This is in context where I'm feeling called to specific places to transmute energy with light language. Blessings. Love and light, Tom. Yeah, thanks, Tom, for the question. And so, I've spoken about this a number of different times in a number of different ways. And the way I'd like to speak about it tonight is just for a moment to forget about spiritual masters and just come into the recognition that all human beings are transmitters. I mean, all beings transmit. We're always transmitting energy. And I mean, most of us, I assume, have hung out with a friend who is deeply depressed or maybe feeling a tremendous amount of rage, maybe some of you have hung out with addicts of all sorts. And, there's a transmission. There's a transmission that comes. I can tell you this. I've hung out with people on meth before. And there is a very unique transmission that comes when we're using meth. I don't think any of us are using meth, but if there's someone around us using meth, there's a transmission that comes from that individual. And it's pretty wild. Like if you ever find yourself in a conversation, I found myself in a long conversation. When I was beginning my practice, I have to smile, but there was a fella who used to come in, all ripped on meth. And I was just like, what the hell is going on here? Like there's just all this frenetic energy in my office right now. What is this thing? What is this thing? What is it? It's like we all transmit. And, the question is, it's like, well, what are we transmitting? Like I was, in the checkout line earlier tonight, and this fellow was just transmitting like a youthful positivity, an exuberance, a gratitude towards life. And it was glorious. It was like, wow, like this kid is amazing. He just felt just like so wonderful to be around. And he was waking people up. And then I'll say, like, I was just kind of in a habitual place when he was waiting on me, but I saw his face. He just woke me up right away. I was just trying to, make sure I got all the items on the list, for my wife. She said, make sure you get all this stuff. Sometimes I go to the store and I don't get everything, but like we're all transmitting light or energy to some degree. Now, we could ask, well, what is a spiritual master? And, like someone like Maharishi or Sri Aurobindo, these are people who are, like are at the avatar level. And an avatar is like a great living incarnation of the divine. And so, in order to be a spiritual master, you have to have all of your power. Your power cannot be spread out. It cannot be divided. But because you have all of your power, if you do have all of your power, you're going to transmit energy more fully. I was on YouTube trying to listen to my UFO disclosure, news today. And Tony Robbins came on, just like as an ad for the video, before the video played. And he said, hey, we're going to do this 3-day event and it's free. And we did it last year and we had 1 million people show up. It's like, well, what is that? Like, well, that's a spiritual being who's transmitting like literally, through the internet, but just his presence. Like if you ever hang out with Tony Robbins, just like this ball of energy and light. And this feeling like he comes with like this energy of, it's real similar to the energy of Ganesh. Like there's no obstacle that can get in the way. No obstacle. He can just knock any door down and his light shines. And with a spiritual master, they have this power where their heart affects your heart. And of course, throughout history, there's been, all kinds of beings. And in the modern age, I mean, there's, I keep seeing all this thing on the news about TikTok, but TikTok's not my world, so I don't have anything to say about TikTok. But there's kids who get on TikTok and they do a little dance. They call themselves an influencer, and it's like, well, that's what we're talking about here, Tom. I don't like that word influencer, but it's something that happens. It's like, hey, you are someone who influences. And again, we all influence each other, but some people have really open throat chakras. So like social media influencers, their throat chakra is open and they believe in themselves and their opinions and their ideas and their expression. And because they believe in it, there's this thing, again, with faith, the more you believe in yourself, the more powerful you become. You become. If we only believe in others and we don't believe in ourselves, well, it's very hard to be a transmitter. But great, spiritual beings throughout history have stood in a role of power, of authority. And they allowed themselves to be used by God, to be used by something greater. Tomorrow here in the US is Dr. Martin Luther King Day. And so here as an individual, he had this dream, he had this vision, a vision of unity. And he came forward and he spoke the truth. He walked the truth. He marched the truth. He preached the truth. He lived it. He embodied it. And he did so in a charismatic way. And of course, changed history for the better. For the better. Now, we've seen this before, that there's been these studies, like they said, Tom says with Maharishi, where, he's the one who started the TM, and it's kind of the Beatles guru, for a moment in history. And he started this transcendental meditation movement, and he'd have groups of people meditate and, in different parts of the city and see if we could have an effect on the crime rates and this and that. And apparently it did. And Sri Aurobindo, he used to work on the psychic plane. One of the things that Aurobindo did was he somehow he got it into the mind of Mr. Adolf, to start a two-front war. And then because of that, the German forces were divided and they weren't able to fight as successfully because they were fighting a two-front war that eventually, became their demise. One of the reasons. I mean, they would have ultimately lost. And why would they have lost? Because the truth always wins. Always wins. Always wins. Good always will triumph over evil. And by always, I mean always in the end. So if it hasn't triumphed yet, it means the world needs more time. The world needs more time. And in an evolutionary world, there's going to be a lot of times when the world needs more time. And so, Tom, I hope there's something there that was helpful. But the big thing for us is, to look at our life and to look at all the little decisions that we make in life. All the little decisions. I must admit that like all the little decisions, they add up to a greater sense of empowerment, a greater sense of love, a greater sense of truth. Or the little decisions in life that we make can divide us, can split us up, we can lose energy. And so I'll say that, like last night, I don't know what happened yesterday. My wife started baking cookies, and then she baked brownies, and then she baked this cake. And then she made this icing, like some kind of cream cheese icing. And it was also delicious. It's also delicious. And I found myself before going to bed, it's like, I'll just have a little piece of cake. And it was so good. I was like, man, I'm going to have another piece of that cake. And it was so good. And, I was taking the dogs out one more time, and it was late. I walked by that cake one more time. And I heard you had enough. But I didn't listen. I had one more little piece of cake. And, I paid the price for it. I paid the price. And, it wasn't a big price. It's just, my stomach, I have a sensitive belly. So my belly likes it when I don't eat, 3 hours before bedtime. And so I just had a little something grumbling around in my belly at night. And I can say, well, it's no big deal. But when we continue to deny the truth, we give our power away. And when we give our power away to things that are less than, our ability to transmit becomes diminished. But when we are a one-pointed individual, when we know who we are and what our life is about, we become incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. Again, Tony Robbins, he knows who he is. He knows what his life is about. And because of that, he's an incredibly powerful individual. My teacher, David, he knew who he was. He knew what his life was about. And what happens is you start to store and almost like stockpile energy when you choose the truth, follow the truth, embody the truth, act out the truth. You stay in this energy of empowerment. And your prayers become powerful. Oftentimes, I get emails from, some of you or many of you asking me to pray for someone, pray for my mother, my father, my dog. And because, I've made a life, a spiritual life where I choose to open myself to God every day. I have this relationship with God. Well, I feel my prayers are powerful. But when we don't have a relationship with God, or we're just hanging out, getting in all kinds of trouble and chasing this and chasing that, and you're just lost in the world of samsara, and we go to pray for the first time, you may not feel any power there. You might not feel any connection there. Connection has not yet been established. I mean, it is established because you're a child of God. But we have too much stuff in the way, too much ego in the way, too much thought in the way, too much, I don't know what the word for non-faith is, too much worldly thought and desire in the way. But when we live a life of faith, we say a prayer. We know that our prayers are heard. Doesn't always mean you get what you want, but we know our prayers are heard. We know this is God's world. We know that whatever is here, even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging, we know that whatever's here is God's will. and it has some purpose for our life. And so, again, I'm going to invite us to inquire and to really look at ourselves, to really look out at life. And from this viewpoint of you being a transmitter, I invite you to look and to see, where is your energy? Is your energy like one of those old scratchy radios, with a dial, where you can't really hear the truth, we don't really express the truth, it's just kind of a messy, jumbling, mixture of 3 different songs playing at the same time with a bunch of static? Or is there a clarity here? Is there a power here? And then when we have this power, well, we can choose, like Tom said, to work with light language. What is light language? It's the language of prayer. It's high vibrational words, high vibrational speech. But the speech becomes high vibrational because in the depths of our heart, we believe, we know, we experience the world as divine. As divine. Where some of us, we use low vibrational words and we have low vibrational beliefs. Poor me, I'm a victim of life. Life is unfair. Why does this always happen to me? I'm no good. I'm unworthy. I'm less than. Everyone else deserves a seat at the table, not me. These are low vibrational words. But high vibrational words are, we are all children of the Most High. We are all beings of light. We are made in the image and likeness of God. In God, all things are possible. In God, all things are possible. But some of us, we think differently. We're like, in God, most things are possible as long as it adheres to the rules of science. It's like we have this whole thing around science. And it just becomes this like insane thing where we think science is real, more real than God. It's like God created something out of nothing. What was that something? The whole universe, all of creation. All of creation. It's like, well, what is that? What is that? And so God made us in this way that we are manifestors, that we are transmitters. And the more sense of power we have, if we believe in ourselves, if we believe in our divinity, if we believe in God, we believe this is one and the same, we become a much more powerful manifester and transmitter. But if we believe that we are unworthy and then we go out in the world and try to manifest, it's like, good luck. Good luck. It's like a car trying to drive with a bunch of flat tires. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. And so one of the things that helps with this process is having a high degree of self-esteem. And so this is where it can be helpful to have a good, healthy sense of ego psychology that I am good, I'm capable, I'm not broken, I'm whole, I'm complete. But then, of course, like right away, we need to take this into the spiritual dimension. I am a child of the Most High. I'm made in the image and likeness of God. God manifests, and therefore I have the ability to co-create along with the divine. Okay, and so I hope there's something good there for you, Tom. We have a second question I'll get to, and again, if anyone has something they want to put in the chat or Raise your hand. I'm here. Hi, Craig. I had a spiritual awakening 5 years ago. It was during a meditation. I didn't know what it was at the time, and I felt something sort of pop in my chest. But I continued to meditate excessively for a long time, and it sent me into, this is fun, a psychosis. Yeah. Sometimes when we open in a big way, sometimes if we're ungrounded and our mind has a predisposition to mental illness, or we might get a little slippery in our egoic psychology. We might slip into a temporary bout of psychosis. And sometimes it's, this can show up in all kinds of ways, but a real common way that people experience it is they experience like a sense of divine exuberance, but mixed with some like mania, where they feel like kind of like manic and up all night. They're not sleeping and just like full of energy. And sometimes, there can be some casualties on the path where, as we are awakening, if we awaken in an explosive way, a dramatic way, and just like all of a sudden, boom, our superego gets out of the way, and all this divine energy, psychic energy, spiritual energy starts rushing through the body. Things can get kind of nutty sometimes in our mental psychology, in our emotional psychology. And so, this can be a great difficulty. And of course, I recommend it can be helpful to meet with someone who's trained in this, who's trained in psychology and in spirituality. And the good news is, at this time in history, more and more people have this type of training. Like I have this type of training. And more and more people are having it. They see the value in having a spiritual training along with a psychological training. In the past, you'd go to one or the other. You'd go to a psychologist or the spiritual teacher. And in the olden days, if you got nutty, they might throw you on a stake and light you on fire. And it's just like, that was a horrific time, to be having a big awakening experience in the olden days. Okay. So he goes on to write, also, the energy has been stuck in my head for 5 years now, and I've learned to live with it. He goes on to write, at different times I've turned to drugs, so it did prolong my journey and the awakening process, but now I'm in recovery and ready to move on with my life and process this journey. I hope you can help and give some advice. Yeah. Well, the big thing, of course, is to find someone grounded and to find someone sane and to speak with them and to see if you can get some support in unpacking your experience in a sane way. Sometimes we go to spiritual people and they just they can make us more crazy, if the spiritual people are talking about UFOs, entities, and crazy psychic astral beings, coming into your life, and you start talking to them, and you can become more and more, in a sense, delusional or psychotic or just lost in the astral realms, which is like, is that psychotic or is that real? Is it, like, what is it? And, of course, there is a reality to the astral realms and all these beings, but if we're feeling off kilter and psychotic, we want to stay out of those astral realms. We want to have a spirituality that's really basic, really Zen-like, or, like the teachings of Jesus, where it's just like, okay, I'm here in the body on earth, and I'm just going to try to live a good, sane, healthy life. Or I forgive those who've hurt me, and I stay in truth. I stay in love. I stay in reality. And so the big thing is going to be to get some support and It sounds like, you're going to recovery, and that, with recovery, so much of recovery is like, I would like it if recovery was called empowerment. Because with recovery, what we're doing is we are taking our power back from the addiction, from the confusion that we had in life, from the chaos of where our ego psychology was out of control. So it can be helpful to think of recovery as the work of empowerment, where you're choosing to walk the steps, you're choosing to work the steps, you're choosing to live the truth. And sometimes, sometimes with spiritual awakening and psychosis, it can be helpful to stop meditating for a little bit, or it can be helpful just to go on walks instead of all that meditating or chanting or saying mantras or this and that. Sometimes it can just help you just to walk. I've worked with a lot of individuals who've went through psychosis, and when I gave them the homework, I was just like, just go out and walk and do your best not to think too much, not to engage with thought, but just walk and see the beauty of nature and getting grounded, letting the thoughts empty out, letting the thoughts fall away, but not touching the thoughts. With psychosis, well, that's a difficulty in the mind. And it comes through believing our thoughts, engaging with our thoughts, dialoguing and conversing with our thoughts in a way that just leads more and more to a sense of being really confused, really confused. I've had people come, back when I had an office, and the fellow come and he was telling me he had wiretaps on his phone and people were trying to kill him and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, man, it's getting kind of crazy here. Kind of crazy. And so I told him, well, what if you just like go out and hike in the mountains? Don't worry about, the CIA, the FBI coming after you, wiretapping your phone. And just to stay out of the head and just come into the body and be in the body. Sometimes it can be helpful just to have a real physical job. If we're having all this psychic energy, all this wild energy, some people get stuck in these loops of just like writing books, and they just start writing, like whoever the fellow was who started Scientology, he'd just sit down and just do automatic writing, just write and write and write and create worlds of nonsense, of confusion, of chaos, just fantasy. Sometimes it's better, instead of writing, is to go out and work in the garden. If you live somewhere cold, shovel snow, shovel snow for a while, and just do one thing. Wash dishes. Just do one thing. To stay out of the head. And just simply come into the body and allow yourself just to do simple, basic human tasks as a way of getting grounded. And you'll find that there'll be periods of time on the path, maybe you don't go psychotic, but maybe you just have a lot of energy moving through your body. And the only thing you can do is walk. The only thing you can do is work a shovel, or do something simple. And doing something simple, it's similar to a mantra and just focusing on one thing. But sometimes, like when there's a lot of energy in our body, like our physical body just needs something to do. It's one of the reasons why I am so just athletic all the time. I just have to be doing something. Like every day, I have to go on a hike. I got to climb a mountain. I got to go to jujitsu. I got to shoot my bow. I got to work on one of the cars. I got to fix something. Like I need to use some energy. And we're this strange mix as human beings of this animal body, this spiritual nature, with human mind, human emotions. And if all of our energy just gets flooded in the mind, and sometimes, the spiritual energy will just flood into the mind, and our mind just starts going crazy with thoughts. I've had many times, like even just when I teach on retreats, a lot of times I don't sleep. I'm just up all night, just buzzing with energy. Now my mind is really silent, so it's like not such a problem. But when I was younger and I had all this unconsciousness within me, when the light would shine, it would light up all the unconsciousness. So I would stay up all night stressing and thinking about my finances, or just getting lost in relationships or fantasies, or, I can't, I can't think, but I had so much time just struggling, worrying about finances throughout my life. And now that, those issues are resolved and I've kind of cleared out the second chakra, and the second chakra center is full of this realization that I am life. There's no thought that I need money. There's just a feeling that life is here and life is sustaining itself. And so I don't have to stay up all night and have crazy thoughts. All thoughts. Like if you're up at 2 a.m., stressing over money or finance or debt or whatever it is, it's similar to psychosis. Like worry is similar to psychosis. In the sense that we're creating this argument in the future. Something that we can't do anything about in this moment. And so much heals on the path. We simply surrender our mind, we surrender our thoughts. And we allow our mind to be silent. We allow our heart to be open. And it creates this balance throughout our system. And of course, if we, open in the hara, there's a depth and there's this indestructible nature that comes online. So we have space, then we have love, and then we have this depth. It creates this immense quality of freedom. But if all of our attention is in our mind and we are spinning in thought, well, we can get really nutty real quick. We can come up with all kinds of scenarios and start fights with people we don't even know. People we don't even know. I'm always amazed at when people, I get so many emails, but people will email me and they'll email me a fight. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know who you are. Like, I don't think you know who I am. Like, why are you wanting to fight with me? Like, what is this about? But sometimes people will hear something. They'll hear something I say and they'll hear it through the lens of their projection. And again, like that's a form of psychosis. It's like when we hear life through this lens, this overlay of I'm not good enough, or I'm better than, or I need to be afraid of everyone, I need to fight with everyone. It's a strange thing, human behavior. We had to create a whole science, whole science of psychology. And you see, psychology has all these different schools in it because it's like, it's so hard to figure people out. And most of the world is psychotic. Most of the world. I mean, we still think at this day and age, we should be killing each other. It's such a crazy thing. That is a psychotic thing. That here in 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025, that we need to be fighting with other nations. And some of us, we fight with our family. We fight with our partners. We fight with our children. We fight with our neighbors. I had a good friend. He just moved because he got in a fight with his neighbor. I'm just like, man, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's a crazy thing. And so if we want to end this suffering, we have to let go of our mind. We have to stop thinking our thoughts are so important, are so serious, are so true. But most of what we think is just that. It's just thoughts. It's just thoughts. It's just thoughts. My wife, she showed me something on Instagram, and it was, we're in Colorado. So in her Instagram feed, she had a snowboarder. He was laying on the ground and he was getting whacked in the face, by a skier, and there's been this thing since I was a kid, skiers against snowboarders. It's like, what the hell? It's a mountain. We're all skiing down it. We're all just having fun. But I can say when I was young, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I might have went way too fast on a snowboard. I might have cut some people off. I might have gotten chased by some skiers. I might have gotten whacked by some ski poles. But anyways, my wife showed me this thing. It was a similar kind of story of a snowboarder. He was like laying down, like he'd made it down to the bottom of the hill, and a skier was just wailing on him with a ski pole. It's like, that's insane. That's psychotic. And then the snowboarder, he had his buddy with him, and his buddy came down the hill and saw what was happening and then just plowed into the skier. It's just like, yes. But it's like, should we say yes or should we say no? No, it's crazy. People are crazy. People are crazy. And so the question for us is, if we want to be awake, am I willing to surrender my thoughts? Am I willing to surrender my emotions? Am I willing to forgive? And to open to the world with love? With love. Am I willing to open to the world with love? Or am I going to do what my ego tells me to do, which is fight, run, or freeze? I love the freeze. Okay, so let's see. There's a couple more comments here. I just want to see if I can get to these. Lauren writes, I'm curious about what you have to say about top-down versus bottom-up awakenings. Well, that's an interesting question. So Lauren's speaking about, Kundalini type awakenings, but this could be true. And this can be true with regular non-dual awakenings as well. So when people awaken top down, there tends to be a lot of light that comes into their head, and it can be just really disorienting. And there can be lots of energies of disassociation and, some of the bizarre side effects, the bizarre realms of psychosis, to use that word loosely, would be derealization, depersonalization. And this is where you start to see your life. You see your life, from like this cold, dead, witnessing perspective. And it can be very shocking for individuals. It can be very frightening. Because one of the things that happens sometimes, is when it's a top-down awakening, is the heart's not online. And so you can feel like a robot, or you can feel like you are not real, because there can almost be like this feeling of disconnection from your soul. And again, someone would say, well, why would that happen during an awakening process? Just sometimes when a lot of light comes into an individual all at once, or a lot of space, well, some of us, if we're not grounded, if we're not rooted, if our human psychological nature is not healthy, if we have a predisposition for mental illness, well, sometimes the psyche can split and crack and things can get nutty. And so the big thing I've seen with people who have top-down awakenings is there can be a high degree of depersonalization and derealization, and just like, again, a feeling of I am only empty space, or I'm in the void. Now, of course, this can happen in a healthy manner, where top down is basically just lights coming down from heaven, and the individual wakes up and says, oh yes, I'm a child of God, and I'm so happy to be in the experience of the divine, and I know myself as love, as space, as light, and there can be no problem there. Now, with a bottom-up awakening, just, to have a little fun, bottom-up awakenings often tend to be really physical and can be really painful. And one of the reasons is because all that light of Kundalini Shakti, or just the light of spiritual realization, has to cut through the densest aspects of our chakras, the densest aspects of our human psychological nature, through our real fight or flight response, our fear response, our sexual nature, our animal nature. And so there can be just like a lot of density, and it can feel really unpleasant. And so my Kundalini woke up, bottom up, and it was very painful physically, very painful physically. But again, if one has trust, if one has faith, if one's a good meditator, if one, practices yoga and creates a sense of inner flexibility, the bottom up awakening, it can be, I don't want to say no big deal. It's always a big deal, but it can be less problematic. Everything is less problematic if you are prepared. If you're prepared. And so it's just like, there's like, we have Chad here in the Sangha. Chad's a builder, and as a builder, we need to have lots of tools, lots of skills, and lots of preparations, to get the job site ready. And when you do things, in a prepared way, a logical way, a logistical way, in an intentional way, and you're skilled, you can build, incredible things. No big deal. But there's this fella who I drive past his house, and I've driven past his house for like 20 years now. And he's been working on his house for 20 years. And, it's like on the way to where I go rock climbing. And my friends and I, when we drive past it, we call his house the Death Star. He's like built this house in Colorado. He built it up on piers, like on telephone poles, like a post and beam, but like on a telephone poles. He's got it up off the ground. And in Colorado, you don't want to build your house up off the ground. You don't want cold air blowing under your house. And he just like builds on it, this like Looney Tunes, Dr. Seuss kind of way, with all these decks and all these bizarre pitched roofs and, all these different building materials. It just looks like a mess. It looks like he was just like learning as he went, and he wasn't prepared. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know what he was getting into. He's just a bad scientist. And some of us on the spiritual path, we're not trained well, or we haven't taken the time to meditate. We haven't laid a foundation. We don't have a good relationship with a spiritual teacher or a guide. And so then our path can be really messy. Like I've met a lot of people who just like off the couch, they're just, not a spiritual bone in their body, just like, I'm going to go do ayahuasca. And then they have a top-down spiritual awakening. And their mind gets blown out and they get lost in these psychotic places. They don't know how to meditate. They don't know how to be with difficulty. They don't know how to work with intense spiritual energies. And normally when people ask a question about this top-down, bottom-up awakening, it's because they had a premature awakening. But even that, I don't believe in premature awakenings. The way I look at it, life is if God has chosen to wake up in you, that's not premature and it's not a mistake. But it certainly can be difficult. And I'll tell you this, it's certainly much easier and clearer when you're well trained, when you know how to meditate, when you have an inner flexibility of consciousness, when you know how to receive grace, when you have a relationship with God. Everything is much easier on the path. But if we fear God or we have a distorted vision of God, that God is like a grumpy, judgmental, being who wants to punish us, it's like, then you'll see this awakening as a punishment. Or if you have faith in entities, but you don't have faith in God, you think you're being preyed upon or something insane. And so it can be really helpful, whatever type of awakening that is happening in you, to have a sense of faith that God's intelligence is here. And we're inviting your intelligence, your divinity to wake up and to come into alignment with the truth of the divine. To come into alignment. And so if we have trouble, and all of us will have some trouble, and our trouble is it's just our path. It's just our next step. It's the thing that we are tripping over, but it's also the thing, like if we're tripping over the heart, there's a good chance we don't fully know about love. We might not know about forgiveness. We might not know about compassion. We may only know about fear. And so if you're having energy get stuck in the heart, it's like, okay, I need to know about love. I need to open to love. I need to meditate on love. Perhaps I need to meditate on compassion, on forgiveness, on letting go, so that the true nature of love can shine throughout the heart. And so, Lauren, I hope there was something helpful there. And I see another one here. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. So Blair has a question here. I'm wondering what hell is, and if it is real. Because when I descend into hell realms, it seems like there's some truth there, and I'm curious about what those states are. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. What is hell? Well, if we're talking about hell realms, I'll just say this, that this is an evolutionary world. That God created an evolutionary world. That's the matrix that you and I are in right now. It's an evolutionary world. And in worlds of evolution, there are all layers of evolution all happening simultaneously. Like we could be on the internet right now and we could descend into the darkest, sickest, most distorted realms, of the internet. And it's just like, well, what's there? Well, beings who are confused, beings who are grasping, beings who are struggling with addiction, who struggle with violence, who struggle with issues around power. And so, yeah, there's these realms throughout creation. And again, like we could just type in 4 keywords and open up into some crazy hell realm. On the internet, we could probably type in 1 word, and be in realms of hell. And what Blair's speaking about, specifically are spiritual realms of hell. And so again, like this reality is multidimensional, and there's layers, and there's realms that are more animalistic or distorted or confused. And it's just like any life form is going to evolve through these realms. Like, I just want us to imagine if we could all go back to like a life form when we are a worm. And it's just like we're just in the dirt all day. It's just like, well, is that a hell realm, or is it just like a realm of dirt? And it's like, well, it could be both depending upon how you look at it. But the thing, again, if we stick with Blair's question and her experience, is so she is finding herself challenged by hell realms. And I used to do this. I would like wake up in the morning, and then all of a sudden it'd be like, just be like screaming in this fiery hell realm. And I would be like, all right, I'm going to start my day here in hell. God has given me hell. And so I'm going to sit and I'm going to meditate in this fiery hell. I'm going to see if I can find the truth in it. And one way of finding the truth is just finding myself, finding my strength, finding my existence. And by that, I mean that, and again, I do this every week. I would look at my hands and say, I exist. There is something here that is alive and that is existing in hell, but hell is not harming my essential nature. Now, it's definitely making my psychology scream and brought up fear, and, I'd turn pale and all that kind of stuff, and, kind of swallow in my throat, maybe feel, something in my belly. But I would look at God and say, what are you doing here? And eventually it came, clear to me that God was testing me to see if I could be awake in hell, if I could love in hell, if I could be compassionate towards hell, if I could not judge hell. And right about when I got to the point where I didn't judge it, when I would just experience it directly, I would see that hell was not hell, but it was just a realm of really intense light. And then, like I'd realize the truth. And then, then all of a sudden I'd be feeling all kinds of light and love. And then the next morning, God would say, let's try again. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd wake up again and just be in this burning hell. I'd be like, all right, okay. And then, it might take me 8 hours of opening in this hell to find that it's light. I mean, and in fact, I'll even back up. I'll say like the first 9 months of this experience, all I did was just like curl up in the fetal position and cry and want to scratch my eyes out, pull my hair out. It's just horrific. I was like, this is terrible. This is horrific. This is so uncomfortable and brutal. And at some point I realized this hell was not going away. And I was like, and I'd pray to God, make it go away, make it go away. And God would just turn up the heat. And so at some point I realized I'm not escaping this. I have to learn to do what, Tom was asking about. I have to learn how to transmute this. I didn't really have that thought, I'm going to transmute this. I was just like, there's got to be a way to work with this. And so I just tried to keep working with it and working with it and working with it. And then I began to be shocked that this thing that I called hell for the past 9 months was actually a realm made of light, made of space, and it had this divine intelligence to it. And even this day, I kind of shake my head because I spent a long time. I spent big chunks of my life in these different hell realms. And when I look back to any of them, I see them all as divine, beautiful, spiritual realms. And there's just this feeling of just aliveness when I feel into those realms now. And there's no hell there. So in one sense, everything is an illusion. And in another sense, it's an evolutionary world. And God will challenge us to wake up through facing the things that we fear. And if we want to be awake, we have to face everything that we fear. We have to face it with truth, with love, a sense of peace and equanimity, a sense of nobility and strength. And this, I'm laughing about it now, but of course, this is the most difficult task that any human being can be called to do. But once you see through it and experience the truth of it, know the truth of it, most of us will have a great cosmic laughter, just where we're just laughing hysterically. That, damn it, God tricked me all this time, and all along it was just a realm of light. It was just a realm of light. Well, what is hell? Hell's really hot. Well, what's really hot? A lot of light. A lot of light. And sometimes the truth is so simple. It's like you feel like Homer Simpson, like, I can't believe it took me so long to realize this. I can't believe it took me so long. You feel like, oh, well, I was just looking at it wrong. And that's the great gift of spiritual awakening is we wake up, we realize, oh, I was just looking at life upside down. I don't need to be afraid of any of this. When I embrace the things I fear begin to transmute. And I begin to see and experience a whole new life. Okay, folks, I'm going to leave it at that. So much love and respect to each of you. Let's just take a moment to close our eyes and pray for world peace. Let us pray for all of our political leaders. May they come into the light. May they come to the table of peace, the table of love, the table of unity, and learn to work together. May all beings be uplifted into the light. May our earth heal and be restored. Be restored in a harmony and a balance, where humans and nature live together in harmony and balance and unity, where we honor this beautiful planet that we live upon, where we see all beings as divine souls. And so much love to each of you. May truth prevail. May truth prevail. Good night, everyone. Good to be with you. See you soon.